What is going on, people? We are back, 15 at 5. We got the extended edition, something I'm going to start doing every first week of the month where I bring someone on. Typically, we're doing that 15-minute session. We keep it short and valuable on 15 at 5, but when I have a special guest on, I have to extend it a little bit. So we'll be doing like probably 30 minutes. But welcome, Kyle. Kyle's a good friend of mine. He's a real estate investor, capital raiser in the area, but Kyle's just a great dude. Great energy, one of my favorite people to be around. So if you ever get the opportunity to go to a meetup with Kyle, you should definitely do that. Go pick his brain a little bit.
Thank you so much for having me on, Jake. I'm super stoked to be on here with you, man. Right back at you.
Love it. Yeah, I went on. Kyle's a little bit of a celebrity up in these parts. He's got his own podcast. He's done over 100 episodes, 100 freaking episodes. I heard a stat from Chris Willix. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he said that like 90% of podcasts don't get past episode like 21. So you're well
I've heard something like that.
Well on your way, man. But today we're just going to talk about midterm rentals. I mean, that's what we're doing, right? I think you're in a great spot, right? Because you're going through the process of your first midterm rental. So it's not like you have like a massive portfolio of them. I think it's a great position to kind of explain for people who are looking to get into it, because you're right in the middle of it, about to list that first midterm rental. And you can kind of speak to some of the challenges and kind of the vision you had when you decided that you wanted to turn one of them into a midterm rental. So I guess let's just let everyone know what the heck is a midterm rental?
Absolutely, my friend. So guys, a midterm rental is essentially the middle point between an Airbnb and a regular long-term rental. So like it's something like 30 plus day stays. You might have heard it from like the Bigger Pockets podcast, like YouTube, like different books and stuff like that. Typically the demographic is a lot of like traveling professionals, like traveling nurses, physicians that travel around the country, insurance companies as well, for folks that, you know, might have gotten displaced from like fires and damage and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing, man.
Yeah, it's great. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's a key point of the midterm rental is you have a different tenant base, right? Because long-term rentals, it's kind of iffy. It depends on the asset or I guess asset class, right? If it's like an A class, B, C, D, of what your tenant's going to be like, right? Short-term rentals, you tend to have really good tenant base, right? Because it's usually kind of pricey and they're usually in nicer areas where you're doing short-term rentals. But I think midterm rentals, you get a really quality tenant and you're able to increase the cash flow a little bit, right? Up from that long-term rate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because what were you seeing? No, you're okay. What were you seeing on the midterm rental rates for the bedroom that you were doing on your midterm?
Yeah. So it's extremely interesting, guys. So essentially I'll go through like what I forecasted for like the regular long-term rental, and then kind of transition into like, you know, what the new medium-term rental rates are, like how I found that, like what that type of thing looks like. So essentially, guys, so my 3-family building is in Leominster, Massachusetts. It's in like central Mass for you guys that are up New Hampshire or other parts around. But so essentially, the strategy that I learned about when it comes to the midterm rentals is it just like everything just kind of happened at the right time and like the stars aligned. Like, so I was stabilizing a unit in Leominster. I used to own or occupy it, don't anymore. I moved elsewhere. But essentially got that thing up and running and found out about the strategy. And then essentially the rents that I forecasted for a regular long-term rental were about between like $1,400 and $1,500 a month. And my unit, it's pretty decent. I mean, like it was a good like 10-ish grand worth of work to turn that unit over. So there's like all new paint throughout. Everything's like a lot cleaner than it was before, like, you know, updated stuff in the bathroom, that type of thing. Not A class, not, I'd say like a B- class type of unit in Leominster, you know. So essentially that's kind of the rate that I was forecasting with like Rentometer, MLS comps, all kind of the normal stuff that most of us are used to. And then I found Furnish Finder, or somebody told me about it. And essentially, I started digging through there, man. And the rates that people get for medium term rentals are pretty freaking crazy, given it is a little bit of a different model and kind of different bits and pieces here or there. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But essentially, I could have expected 1,400 to 1,500 for Leominster. And I've come across listings that are, I don't want to say like a lesser quality than mine, but I should say mine's probably a bit more on the updated side, that are getting like 2,400 a month easy, literally like an extra $1,000, right? And like crazy freaking numbers, you know. It's especially if you have it in a building with, you know, other performing units, other MTR units, STR units, like however you kind of have that mix. It's really interesting when you start to factor the numbers a different way and kind of alter the model a little bit, like the type of results that can come from that type of demographic. So essentially, Jake, do you want me to start to get into kind of like what's different about an MTR versus an LTR? Or
Yeah, just keep flowing with it. I like how this is going. But real quick, yeah, I said in the title, how to increase your cash flow by 50%. That's like 65% right there.
yeah,
1,500 to 2,400, or even
Yep.
1,400 to 2,400. That's like 70% increase, guys.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely
It's
bananas.
game-changing.
I think it is. It is. I think a key point to hit on with that is, as you said in the very beginning, needs to be in an area near hospitals, right? A big demographic for this are traveling nurses. So it needs to be around some sort of hospital, or it could be some sort of corporate rental, right? Maybe if it was in a more popular area, maybe businesses would pay for their employees to stay in different areas based on the whatever the job is. I think that's a key point about it. But yeah, keep going into just what you're on.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. So guys, I mean, those type of numbers, especially with like STRs as well, like getting those forecasted gross rents in comparison to long-term rental rents makes everybody's eyes go freaking crazy, right? But there is a little bit more, or I should say a little bit of a different model with different bits and pieces that come along with that, right? A little bit of a different management. And essentially what that boils down to, from, you know, what I've understood, and also I've been reading the 30-Day Stay. It's by Sarah Weaver and Ziona McIntyre. It's one of the BP books that came out, but highly recommend it. Anyway, but so essentially, like the when it comes down to like utilities, and this is all just like theory in my mind right now, you know what I mean? And the kind of the things I've researched, like the folks that I've talked to, my unit, as Jake mentioned, hasn't actually been listed yet. In the next couple of weeks, it should be. So things might change a little bit, but I don't picture so. But essentially, so under my understanding, you have to include utilities in your rent. You know, it's like doing some of these other kinds of models, depending on the tenants that you're renting to, that type of thing. So although there is a pretty massive gross margin increase that you should be getting, you know, for housing this type of demographic, there is a bit more costs that come up as well. So for my my case in particular, that unit in Leominster has an oil tank, which kind of made me a little bit nervous when it came to like how I was going to factor that and like the price, and like I'm like, ugh. The electricity for that unit, and then also the internet as well. The water sewer, I don't really kind of worry about, I guess, with this type of thing. But so essentially the way that I forecasted those rents was it's about another like 300-ish bucks a month. So essentially my goal for Leominster is to net another 2,400 plus. I'm hoping 2,400 is kind of the minimum that I was looking at. There are units, if you go on to furnishfinder.com and look at some of the listings for like Leominster Fitchburg, there are some absolutely gorgeous ones that are looking for like $3,000. There are some that are like, you know, less than average, like, you know, people taking the listing photos with their like old iPhone, like you can see them in the mirror and stuff like that, like stuff like that, you know what I mean? That are getting like 2,200, 2,400, stuff like that. So I think there's a very interesting spread in there. I'm hoping after, like, if I get 2,400 less like 300-ish bucks a month in expenses, I'm hoping to net an extra roughly like 700-ish bucks a month from just doing that strategy, you know. And there is one factor to keep in mind too, is your cleaner. That part I'm still figuring out. I have a list of cleaners that I need to actually watch Jason Regan's YouTube video on it. Shout out to you, buddy, if you're watching this, to kind of see how to vet a cleaner and that type of thing. Because that's another part of it, guys, is similar to an SDR. Like, when you're most likely going to have multiple tenants per year, right? I mean, based on like the research I've done and everything, if you figure there's like 60-day, 90-day stays, you might have like 3-4 tenants a year, something like that. So there's going to be turnover once in a while, you know. And the most effective use of your time when that turnover comes around is definitely not going to be going to the unit with like a Clorox bottle or something and like cleaning up and stuff like that. Your time is best spent elsewhere. So that's kind of another dynamic too, another price that's a little bit different than long-term rental to kind of factor in. I'm trying to think of what else, man.
No, that's good. So so is the main time frame though like 60 to 90 days?
Yeah. I mean, it's like how it's defined usually is like 30 plus, but
Okay.
from like everything that I've, you know, kind of researched and stuff like that, it'll typically be like 60, 90 days. And then also, if it is a traveling nurse or doctor or a demographic like that, there is a potential for the hospital to continue the contract. So then that time actually, you know, kind of keeps going on.
So
that's a big one, man. Sorry.
yeah, no, you're
Just
good.
got
You're
another
good.
light bulb.
So nurses obviously
Yep.
are the big thing, right? Is that who you're mainly marketing to?
Yeah, and that's the tough thing, man, is like, so I'm 110% placing a dominant focus on marketing on Furnish Finder, because that's kind of the biggest one. I have read in this book as well, and I need to dig into it a little bit more, that people can post MTRs on Airbnb as well, but you have to do it a certain way. Like, I don't know if like the number of minimum number of days, like 30 plus or something. I got to do some research into it, but yeah, and that's the thing, man. I mean, that's who I picture the demographic being most likely, but there is potential for it to be like completely different. You know, like you mentioned earlier, Jake, like, you know, companies nearby that, you know, are flying people in from different parts of the country for like corporate rentals. And another demographic in this book was construction workers. You know, like if there's like huge projects going on, bringing in construction workers from wherever and they need housing, you know, and these projects aren't going to take forever, you know, but they're also not going to last 2 days either. So it's kind of that awkward medium, you know what I mean? But, and then like insurance companies as well, with like people that are displaced from like fires and stuff like that. That's another one that's kind of in that grouping, you know?
Seems like a pretty vital product to the marketplace, though, right? Because obviously, short-term rentals compete with hotels, right, for overnight stays. But what about those extended stays that are like 3 weeks, 30 days, 45 days? Like, it doesn't really make sense to stay in a hotel. It's going to be expensive. So it's kind of a unique product that's being offered, I think, to the marketplace, the medium-term rental.
Absolutely, man. And that's the thing, right? Is like, I feel like it can totally be a win-win depending on if the cards fall the way that you need them to, you know, to be able to provide like a pretty awesome, you know, place with like, you know, some of these amenities and like washer dryer on site, stuff like that. You know, or furnished. That's another huge aspect of this, guys. You know, a nice furnished environment that also works out pretty good for the investor as well. And like another aspect of this too, in regards to like to this type of audience that's going to be watching this more on like the investor side and maybe looking to kind of get into it, that type of thing, is the cool thing about the MTRs, guys, is because of the increased gross rents, you're able to look at multifamilies that have smaller bedrooms, like in the unit count. So like if you find a 2-family or a 3-family or something that has like 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, if you're trying to get that thing to cash flow as a long-term rental, it might be tight, especially with the interest rates, how they are. But say, to your point that you mentioned earlier, Jake, of if you look on Furnish Finder and you see that there's like a huge freaking demand in searches and housing in that particular area, and there's like, hospitals nearby, that type of thing, the numbers that you might be able to get might be able to make that work. And it's like, that's the interesting thing, is like smaller buildings like that might be buildings that regular, long-term investors looking for like an 8 to 12% cash on cash might have to overlook, because the numbers just aren't there. Like, especially like with the interest rates, how they are, and that type of thing, so it's another lens to be able to look at a property that maybe might have like a different amount of competition, you know what I mean? And who knows, just something to keep in mind.
I think it's a crucial thing for us to learn about and understand, right? Because it's almost understanding the highest and best use for the property, right? Because if everyone's, especially with that duplex range, like you said, it's tough to get duplexes to cash flow. And especially if you're buying a duplex right now with the debt or mortgages at 7%, it's going to be really hard to cash flow. But if you can get those medium-term rental rates going from a 1,400 to 2,400, I feel like that is, obviously there is some added expenses with the cleaning and stuff, right? But I think the net profit you're going to get from that is worth it. I think it's something to look at. Real quick, one thing I did want to touch on was kind of a step-by-step outline of, I guess, let me step back real quick. My camera, I'm in the freaking light.
The sun's coming out.
I got to fix that. Furnish Finder. Can you just explain that real quick? It's like an Absolutely. Airbnb app. What is that?
Yeah, gotcha. So guys, it's essentially like, if you think about it, kind of like an Airbnb site, kind of like the MLS, it's a directory where hosts can list their units either by the room or by the entire unit for like this type of demographic. And like the other part of this too, guys, is like, I've heard that this strategy has been around for a very long time. It's just like, I don't know if it was COVID or that probably had an impact on it, whether it was small or large. I'm not exactly an expert, but like this has been around for a while, and like a lot of the listings that you'll find are, like I was mentioning earlier, like they're not exactly like the prettiest looking pictures that are there, and like, kind of looking for that like gorgeous description and the pictures and everything, like looking all like pretty and everything. So it's interesting, kind of what you find on there. And essentially, so there is another part of that website too, if you guys are wondering like where you can find data for this kind of stuff, is so there's furnishfinder.com, which is where you can see like there's like maps for the area, like what units are available, what the units are going for, what they have, the listings, like the whole 9 yards. But the data is a little bit separate. I believe it's furnishfinder.com/data. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But if not exactly like that, I'm 99% sure it is. But if you just Google like furnished finder and then like data, it'll bring you right up, But essentially you'll be able to see the type of demand for this type of housing in different cities around like your neck of the woods, wherever that might be. And it's cool, man, because there's like it's all categorized. There's pie charts. Like if anybody's like super analytical and into data, like you're gonna have a field day, I'm telling you. But essentially, like, there's graphs for what average rents are going for by the room, by the unit. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff. The amount of searches for that particular area in the past 12 months, the amount of searches for housing, there's two huge numbers on there. It's something like that, like in the area. But yeah, I absolutely love that site, guys. It's wicked cool. It's, I mean, even like just to take a peek, right? Like, and compare some of the how many inquiries were in like your market versus like the one next door. Like I had a bit of a an eye-opening thing, man, because so in Leominster, I was getting, I believe, like 7,000-ish searches like for the year or whatever. And then I looked up Tewksbury just because why the hell not? It was like 100 and something thousand. So I was like, huh. So it's really interesting, you know what I mean? And like I know that, you know, there is a lot of demand in like Leominster and the areas that I'm looking in, and a couple hospitals nearby. There's like a ton of hospitals in Worcester, stuff like that, like not too far, whatever. But like then you look at a town like Tewksbury. My hypothesis would be that like being right next to Lowell, there's like Lowell General, there's the Saints Medical Campus, like UMass Lowell. There's a lot of like bigger kind of stuff, you know. But in my opinion, it's worth taking a gander. You know what I mean? Like just see what happens. You know, like see what your town kind of comes up as. Maybe like towns that you're. Sorry, just lost my breath a little bit. Towns that like you're looking to potentially invest in, and just check out the numbers, you know what I mean, and see what it shows up with. You might be surprised.
Seems like a pretty all-inclusive software, honestly. It's like AirDNA for Airbnb.
I've heard of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it must be something similar to that. Is this specific for medium-term rentals, Furnish Finder?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So it seems like a good starting place for people as they're doing their analysis. Seems like one of the first things you'd want to probably do if you're considering turning something into a midterm rental is hop on Furnish Finder and look at the rental rates and see if it makes sense, or what, like you said, the search volume, right? In your specific market, that one, does it even make sense to have a medium term rental? If it does, what kind of rental rates are you getting? And then you can compare those to what you'd have it as a long term, right? See if it makes sense to do this upgrade. And it doesn't have to be all the units, right? It could be one unit like you're doing for the triplex, right? It's like, one, it's a medium term. And you're in a unique position because you have 2 units getting rented out, which just almost covers the mortgage, right? Essentially. So you're kind of able to experiment with this third unit in the medium term rental to see how it's going to do, which I think is phenomenal. Real quick.
Thank you, man.
One thing I wanted to touch on before I get to the questions that I like to ask everyone. Just if you could do a brief outline of like, say I wanted to get into medium-term rentals, what's a step-by-step on how I can get started with that? Like, what do you think should I go to Furnish Finder first and look at the rates, and then I should maybe talk to someone who's had a medium-term rental and then talk to a cleaner, or like what do those steps look like?
Sure, man. Yeah, so I would I'd hop on Furnish Finder first, you know, and kind of let the data talk to you a little bit and see what's going on. From there, I would definitely head to Bigger Pockets. There's actually been a ton of podcasts, and one of the women that wrote this book, I'll recommend that as a step in a minute. But I believe it was Sarah Weaver. She's one of the co-authors of this book. She's been interviewed on like 1 million podcasts. Like if you go to like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, and you look up like medium-term rental, there'll be like a ton of podcasts on there, guys, of like people just like asking questions. And this woman in particular has been a guest on a ton of them. So I definitely do that. Check out the data first and then start to absorb through podcasts. Bigger Pockets has like the YouTube videos, like the regular interviews or whatever. Those are good. Hop on the Bigger Pockets forums and just kind of like rifle out some questions about MTRs, like look up some of your questions to see if people were talking about it before and that type of thing. Because if you have the question, there's a good chance that somebody else has had that question before too. So always good to look. Definitely like meeting people on Bigger Pockets and meeting people and investing within that niche. Hopping on a call with them and shooting the breeze is always phenomenal. That's definitely like number 3, 4, I forget which one I was on there, but and then somewhere in there as well, I do, if you're really looking into it and it makes sense, I couldn't recommend this book enough. It's The 30-Day Stay by Sarah Weaver and Ziona McIntyre. One of the Bigger Pockets books that came out a couple months ago. It covers everything from like furnishing to like demographics to like financing the deal, like all kinds of crazy stuff, guys. I freaking love this book, man. It's awesome. You can get it on Amazon, like the Bigger Pockets store, stuff like that. And I'd start there.
I think that's a good first step. Seems like kind of like the manual, honestly, is getting that book, The 30-Day Stay, Sarah Weaver, and who's the other author?
Ziona McIntyre.
Ziona McIntyre. Oh, I think she has a pretty big Instagram, right?
I think so. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I would pick up that book, guys, if you're looking to get into midterm. That seems like it should give you everything you need to know. And then I think it's always a good idea to talk with people who are in the space. Isaiah and I always say, like, let's not reinvent the wheel here, right? Someone's already doing this. We don't need to spin our tires for weeks on end or months on end trying to figure out how to do it. Someone's already done it. Talk to them. But I think those are a great starting places with that book. And then, like you said, Bigger Pockets podcast and other information. Love it, man. So I just want to ask a few questions here. I like to ask everyone before we get on out of here. We keep it brief at 30 minutes, but who on social media has influenced you the most? Like, if you could tell me to follow one person, who would it be?
Damn, love it, man. I would say I'm gonna bounce it right on you, man. I'm gonna say Jake Burhans, guys. And no, dude, I'm serious. Like,
no, you can't say me. You can't say me. It's got to be someone for example, like I would say Alex Hormozy, but like it's like too popular to follow Alex Hormozy now. But like, who's like someone you follow? It's like probably pretty big on Instagram. Might have like tens of thousands, 100,000 followers that like cranks out content. You're like, dang, like I'm getting stuff from that every day.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want
to pick like one person. It doesn't have to be the most influential person, but just like one person.
Yeah, I'd say Axel Ragnarsson, guys. I know it's not exactly like in the MTR realm, but like the amount of value that I consume, and like the amount of value that guy puts out is insane. It's crazy. Definitely follow Jake too, though. Shameless plug.
100%. Kyle cranks out some content as well. But no, Axel's great. He has a ton of stuff on his. He's a little more analytical for the analytical people. If you like that, he puts out a lot of analytical stuff. But he's active on Instagram. He's got his Twitter going. I think those are his two main things. But he's a big multifamily operator. So if you're interested in multifamily, he puts out a lot of good stuff. I agree. I think that's an important one because I kind of I revamped my Instagram a couple of years ago where I only follow like business people and like people, I don't know, it's kind of like educational content. So I think it's important for people to try to start to build their timelines like that, right? Because if you use social media in the right way, I feel like it could be almost like a learning tool, right? Because I'm just scrolling through straight educational content and then it's not as bad as just like scrolling through like what your friends are doing, you know what I mean? Which is also good to see, but I just thought that would be important for people to know at least.
Totally.
What do you think is the single most important thing that you do every day that helps you to stay on track and stay productive?
Definitely networking and like just talking to people in the same space as you, like telling them what you're up to, what you're trying to do. Just always sharing, you know what I mean? Like hearing what other people are looking to do, seeing like how you can help them out, like just connecting. Like the more people that you talk to, guys, in whatever arena of real estate that you're in, like the more that you put like yourself out there and you look to serve others in what they are putting themselves out there for, the faster that your progress is going to accelerate. You know what I mean? Like just have that mindset of servitude, and like there's also that element of accountability as well. Of like, hey, you know, like this is what I'm trying to do. Like I need to get it done today. I'd be like, all right, dude, like you're gonna do that today. You know, like it's always be talking to people, guys, all the time. Like always have conversations going, always have the brain going, and just keep rolling.
100%. Yeah, I think that's huge. A community around you, especially when you're in the entrepreneurial space or something that's a little different than what most people do. I think it's important to have people who think the same as you, who are going through the same struggles as you, who are able to kind of back you up and help you ultimately get through what you're going through, right? I think that's huge, absolutely huge. What do you need right now in your business? I mean, or just at the stage you're at, what could the audience help you with?
To be honest with you, man, I've just kind of been chugging along, you know what I mean? I've taken a kind of a recent route and interest towards like capital raising and building up like certain systems and you know, kind of like brand awareness and stuff like that. And just really trying to grow things, you know what I mean? And like trying to grow like a Facebook group that I have for the podcast and stuff like that. And the podcast itself, you know, just trying to keep it rolling.
100%. So it sounds like people can support you through listening to your podcast, which is available on Spotify, on YouTube. Are you putting it on YouTube or no?
Yep. Apple
YouTube, yeah.
Podcasts.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and it's KCRE. It's like creating wealth, right? KC.
Exactly. Exactly.
Creating Wealth podcast, and the link to that will be in the show notes here. But yeah, you can support him there. You can join his Facebook group. You're posting a lot in that, actually. It's a pretty active Facebook group. So yeah, definitely two places to connect with Kyle. But appreciate you, man. Appreciate you coming on, just spilling a little bit about midterm rentals. Like I said, this show is just about kind of keeping it brief, but it's just kind of give people a high level overview where they don't have to sit down for an hour and listen to something, but and kind of get an idea of whatever the subject is. And I think in this case, midterm rentals, definitely something people should be considering. Any last thoughts you have?
Absolutely, man. No, thank you so much, Jake, for having me on, man. It's an honor. Guys, definitely check it out. See if it's a niche for you. It's caught fire relatively recently, and who knows, maybe running your property a little bit different could make a difference that's much bigger. You never know. Go check it out.
Absolutely. Awesome. Appreciate you, Kyle. As for everyone else, we'll be back on next week, next Monday. I'm going to be back with Isaiah, just doing our normal 15 to 5, 15 minutes. We're going to talk about partnerships and how we squad up with partners to do deals, or how we've done it specifically, Isaiah and I. So look forward to seeing you next Monday at 5. Peace.